the most dangerous thing a mountain man could hear in the American wilderness wasn't a gunshot. It was silence. Because when you were hundreds of miles from the nearest town, there was number 911, no police cruiser racing down a dirt road, and no guarantee that anyone would even know you were missing. You could be sitting beside a dying campfire when suddenly the horses became restless. The forest went quiet. A branch snapped somewhere beyond the darkness, and you had only seconds to decide whether you were facing a wild animal, a desperate stranger, or something far worse. This was the reality of frontier America. Mountain men lived in a world where isolation wasn't a vacation. It was a way of life. They crossed frozen passes, slept beside rivers, traveled through forests where predators were common, and sometimes encountered people who had nothing to lose, so they carried protection. But here's where the story gets fascinating. Some of the weapons associated with these men became so controversial that authorities in different towns and territories attempted to restrict or outlaw them. And we're not talking about one simple list of illegal weapons. Frontier America was a patchwork of laws. A knife that was acceptable in one place could attract attention in another. A concealed pistol could be treated differently from an openly carried firearm. A large blade might be considered a useful frontier tool by one person, and a dangerous weapon by another, and that distinction could mean everything. Imagine walking into a frontier settlement, carrying one of these notorious weapons. People would notice. A large Bowie knife hanging from your belt. A strange Pepperbox pistol hidden beneath a coat. A compact Derringer tucked away for emergencies. A short shotgun associated with Stagecoach guards. These weren't simply pieces of metal and wood. They were symbols. Symbols of independence. Symbols of danger. And sometimes symbols of the fact that the person carrying them understood one brutal truth. Out here, nobody was coming to save you. But here's the part that most people don't know. Many of these weapons weren't originally designed as the terrifying tools that Hollywood later turned them into. Some were hunting equipment. Some were military technology. Some were ordinary utility tools. Others became infamous because criminals, gamblers, soldiers, and travelers used them in completely different ways. And that's why the history is so much more interesting than the legend. Because behind every weapon was a person, a trapper trying to make it through another winter. A traveler crossing hundreds of miles. A prospector protecting the supplies that represented everything he owned. A stagecoach guard watching the horizon. A settler defending a remote homestead. And sometimes, a lawman trying to keep order in a place where the nearest courthouse was days away. Today, we're going through 25 of the most notorious weapons connected to mountain men and the American frontier, especially those that became restricted, controversial, or associated with outlaw culture. Some are surprisingly familiar. Some are almost forgotten. And a few are so strange that you might wonder how anyone trusted them in the first place. But don't skip ahead, because as we move down this list, the weapons become more unusual. The stories become darker. And the line between survival tool and outlaw weapon becomes increasingly difficult to see. By the end, you'll understand why frontier communities became so concerned about certain weapons, and why the phrase outlawed doesn't always mean what modern audiences assume it means. This isn't just a story about guns and knives. It's a story about survival. It's a story about fear. It's a story about the American frontier before modern law enforcement could reach every corner of the country. And most importantly, it's a story about what people were willing to carry when civilization was miles behind them. So stay with me until number 1, because the final entry changes the way you may think about the entire list. If you enjoy forgotten American history, frontier, survival stories, and the secrets that history books often leave behind, hit the like button and subscribe to Ethan Cross so you don't miss the next story. And tell me in the comments, where are you watching this video from? I want to know how far this story traveled from the old American frontier to you today. Imagine waking up alone in the wilderness and realizing there is no sheriff, no police station, no telephone, and no one coming to help you. The nearest settlement could be days away. The nearest lawman might be hundreds of miles away. And somewhere beyond the trees, someone or something could be watching. For mountain men, trappers, scouts, prospectors, and frontier settlers, survival often depended on whatever they could carry. Some weapons were legal in one territory, but restricted or banned in another. Others became controversial because of local laws, changing regulations, or their association with outlaws. And some earned frightening reputations simply because they were so effective at close range. Today, we're traveling deep into the American frontier to uncover 25 weapons that became part of the mountain man's world. Tools of survival, protection, intimidation, and sometimes desperation. At number 25, we begin with the humble hunting knife. It wasn't simply a kitchen tool. A good frontier knife could help prepare food, cut rope, work leather, and serve as a last line of defense. Its importance was so great that losing one could become a serious problem in the wilderness. Number 24 is the heavy Bowie style knife. These large frontier knives became famous during the 19th century and developed a reputation far beyond their practical purpose. Their intimidating appearance eventually inspired restrictions in some places. Number 23 is the Pepperbox pistol, an unusual firearm with multiple barrels. It looked almost like something from another world. Several barrels allowed multiple shots before reloading, although the design had obvious limitations. Number 22 is the Derringer. Small enough to conceal beneath clothing, these compact pistols became closely associated with gamblers, travelers, and dangerous encounters. Their tiny size made them particularly notorious. Number 21 is the cap and ball revolver. Revolvers changed frontier life because they offered something earlier pistols couldn't. Multiple ready shots without completely reloading after every discharge. That advantage made them enormously influential. Number 20 is the single-shot pocket pistol. Small firearms like these could disappear beneath a coat or inside a saddlebag. They weren't necessarily powerful, but on the frontier, portability mattered. Number 19 is the sawed-off shotgun. Its compact form made it controversial, and, in various jurisdictions and periods, subject to restrictions. The weapon became an enduring symbol of frontier violence. Number 18 is the repeating rifle. Unlike a traditional single-shot firearm, repeating designs gave frontier travelers more opportunities to respond during an emergency. Their arrival represented a major technological change. Number 17 is the lever-action rifle. It became one of the most recognizable firearms of the American West. Its rapid handling made it popular among ranchers, travelers, and lawmen alike. Number 16 is the percussion rifle. Before modern cartridges became standard, percussion firearms represented an important step forward. Mountain men valued dependable equipment because a failure in the wilderness could have serious consequences. Number 15 is the flintlock pistol. By the 19th century, it was becoming outdated, but the flintlock had already played an enormous role in American frontier history. Number 14 is the hatchet. Unlike a specialized weapon, the hatchet was a genuine survival tool. It could help with camp chores, cutting wood, and emergencies. Its usefulness explains why versions of it remained common in frontier camps. Number 13 is the tomahawk. Its history reaches deep into Native American and colonial America, and its later image became heavily mythologized by popular Western stories. Number 12 is the cavalry saber. Designed primarily for mounted combat, sabers represented military power rather than everyday mountain travel. Still, their presence on the frontier reflected how closely military and civilian life sometimes overlapped. Number 11 is the fighting knife. Unlike a simple utility blade, fighting knives were designed with combat in mind. Their reputation eventually led some communities to introduce restrictions against carrying certain large or specialized blades. And now we reach the 10 weapons, whose stories become even more fascinating. Number 10 is the large Bowie knife. By the mid-19th century, enormous knives had become symbols of frontier toughness. Some towns attempted to restrict or prohibit the carrying of oversized blades, especially during periods of violence. Number 9 is the concealed pistol. Concealment itself became controversial. Authorities in different states and territories passed laws regulating concealed weapons, meaning a firearm could be legal to own but illegal to carry hidden. Number 8 is the Pepperbox revolver. Its unusual appearance made it one of the most recognizable early repeating handguns. It wasn't perfect, but its multi-barrel concept captured the imagination of the frontier. Number 7 is the coach gun. Stagecoaches carried valuable cargo and passengers across isolated territory, making protection a serious concern. Short double-barreled shotguns became strongly associated with guarding travelers and property. Number 6 is the trunk gun. Designed for compact storage, unusual firearms like these could be transported discreetly and deployed when needed. Their strange mechanisms are part of what makes historical firearms so fascinating today. Number 5 is the pocket revolver. Small revolvers offered a compromise between concealability and repeated firing. Their popularity demonstrates how strongly frontier technology was moving toward smaller, more convenient firearms. Number 4 is the heavy frontier rifle. For a mountain man, a rifle wasn't merely a weapon. It could represent food, protection, and survival. A hunter might depend on it for days or weeks at a time. Number 3 is the repeating carbine. Compact military-style repeaters became increasingly important as technology advanced. Their appearance marked the beginning of a new era in which firearms could be carried and operated more efficiently. Number 2 is the infamous Bowie knife. Its reputation became so powerful that the name itself became part of American folklore. Some communities considered large knives dangerous enough to regulate, especially during periods when public violence was a major concern. But number 1 is perhaps the most surprising of all: the concealed weapon itself. Why? Because on the frontier, the most important question wasn't always what weapon someone carried. It was where they carried it, how it was carried, and whether local law permitted it. Frontier America wasn't one giant lawless wilderness where everything was permitted. Different states, territories, towns, and periods had different rules. Some weapons were restricted. Some were prohibited in certain places. Others were perfectly ordinary tools that became controversial because of how they were used. And that is the part most Hollywood westerns leave out. The mountain man wasn't simply walking through the wilderness looking for a gunfight. Most were trying to survive. They hunted, traded, explored, trapped, crossed dangerous terrain, and dealt with isolation that modern people can barely imagine. A weapon could mean food. It could mean protection. It could mean confidence. And sometimes, simply having one could prevent a confrontation before it ever began. That is why these 25 weapons remain so fascinating. They tell us less about violence itself and more about the dangerous world in which frontier Americans lived. A world where help could be days away, where the wilderness was unforgiving, and where the difference between preparation and disaster could be incredibly small. And when the law was miles away, survival often depended on knowing exactly what you carried and why.